Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's 1 o'clock on Friday, the 28th of January. I'm Simon Ward. I'm your host for this Next Steps Best on the Web Masterclass series. I'm very fortunate to have Helen Dos Santos with us. I'm going to introduce you to Helen in just a couple of minutes. But first of all, I just thought I'd spend 30 seconds or so talking through how the session is going to work. We're going to be around for about an hour or so, a very informal session. Important that people connect. That's one of the most important things, that engagement with each other. So when we can, we'll have the chat up live on the screen because we're going to be doing some presentations. It won't be there all the time, but I will be monitoring it and asking Helen questions as they are asked. But as I say, very informal. If you have a question, pop it into caps or put a flaming emoji at the front, just so that I spot it among the other more generic chats. I'd also like to spend just another minute or two talking about Next Steps before we get into Helen's session. Next Steps is a charitable initiative that is being driven by an ever increasing group of recruiters, coaches, HR professionals, veterans, and hiring managers and business executives who are coming together to create a unique and innovative approach to delivering job search training and then ongoing career mentoring to those individuals who are leaving, transitioning out of our military service, out of our armed forces, or for veterans. I'd like to say a very special thank you to the guys at Pushfar. Pushfar is a leading, innovative, and incredibly intuitive mentoring technology platform, and they have given us an iteration of that platform completely free of charge. It's a tens of thousands of pounds contribution to the charity. We are going through the hoops at the moment with the Charities Commission, which I am assured is quite a lengthy and painful process, but we will get there. And at some point during this year, Next Steps will come live as a fully registered charity, and we'll start recruiting both mentors, and then we'll start recruiting mentees in the transitioning community among our armed forces personnel and also in veterans. So that's why we're here. We're using this series of masterclasses to get the name of Next Steps out there. And Helen, I'm incredibly grateful that you have given your time up. Helen's an incredibly busy lady, so giving us an hour on a Friday doesn't come without some sacrifice and some organisation. So I'm very grateful for that, Helen. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
What I'm not going to do, Helen, is try to steal your thunder or try to even introduce you. I'm well outside my comfort zone. If this was about LinkedIn or interview techniques or CV writing, I'd feel a little bit more confident. But this is an area that I think is very, very important and absolutely fundamental at the moment to people going through transition and through job hunting. That ability to have a positive mindset, the resilience to bounce back after the occasional bump in the road, I think is as important as having a good CV or a good interview technique, to be honest, in today's unpredictable jobs market. But I'm going to hand you over to Helen and let her explain who she is and what we're going to do with the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, Simon. Whenever you're ready, if you wouldn't mind just getting the slides up, that would be great. So this afternoon session is entitled Powerful Thinking Every Day. So what if I told you the most complex thing in the world right now is sitting in the room that you're in, and everything starts with a thought? And if we can get our thinking not just positive, but powerful, then we're going to achieve so much more that we want in our lives. Mental health for me is not a destination, but it's a process. It's not all about how you drive there. Sometimes it's about where you're going. So just a little bit about me. I'm a wellbeing and resilience life coach. I'm an internationally accredited NLP master coach. And just to kind of give you a little bit of background, I grew up in Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe's rule in a fairly corrupt circumstances. Now, moving to the UK was a massive adjustment for me in the 1990s. And I was made redundant from my first 5 jobs. And it was that point, I mean, I barely knew what the word redundancy meant, but it was at that point I decided I needed to really take control of my life and not let circumstances control me, which is exactly what had happened with living in Zimbabwe. And it was really powerful thinking that got me through and enabled me at the age of 52 to start my own business. And since 2017, I've now worked with over 10,000 people. So I'd like to just give you a tiny taster today of what it would be like to become a really powerful thinker. So just going on to the next slide, please, Simon. Again, just by way of, little introduction, as I said, I tend to work on a one-to-one basis with people experiencing mental health problems, and that can be right from one extreme end of trauma and abuse through to things like depression, anxiety, even stress, and just emotional turmoil. Now, the other thing I also do is I run workshops, not dissimilar to this. Most of them at the moment are on Zoom, but I also do deliver face-to-face workshops too. And a lot of the work I'm doing on a one-to-one basis is quite frequently on Zoom as well. So what I'd like to do today is just really give you some very quick takeaway tips on becoming more of a powerful thinker. So again, Simon, thank you. So what I'd like you to do is just take a moment to read this. The first impression might be, blooming hell, Helen doesn't know how to spell.
I have to say, I put this up as a post and people just thought it was my typing. Anyone who knew me thought it was my typing.
Yeah. But actually, we can read that. It's really clever. Our brains have a way of being able to just juggle the words around. And this is one of the reasons why we can overread our own typos quite easily. So again, Simon, just the next slide, please. I wonder what you can see here. Can you see two fish, or do you see a face? And the next one, please, Simon. And how about this one? Which of these arrows appears the longest to you? Now, interestingly, they're actually the same length. It's just an illusion with the way the arrows are positioned. And the next one. So what about this? Do those circles seem to be moving, or are they still? I'm going to suggest we move on from that slide because that can play havoc with your eyes sometimes if you look at that for too long. Okay, so I wonder what you take from this. What's the first thing that you read here? Now, a lot of people will say opportunity is nowhere.
That's what I read.
Yeah. Now, some people will actually pick out opportunity is now here.
Yeah.
And then there's opportunity, I snow here. And very few people actually get that one. But again, we seem to have this negative bias. So the first thing that we tend to see is opportunity is nowhere. So this starts to really help us start understand how incredibly powerful our thinking and our brains are. So again, the next slide, please, Simon. So I just want to talk for a moment about assumptions, because we hear this in people's language. Probably on a daily basis, people are saying, I assumed this, or I assume that. And quite often that can get us into trouble. So I've been talking for a few minutes now, and I'm going to suggest you perhaps pop your answers in the chat box. But I'm going to share with you 3 facts about myself. One of them is actually not entirely true. And I'd like you to try and imagine which one it is that is not true. So I have toured the Arctic Circle and seen the Northern Lights. I am an Olympian gold medalist ballroom dancer, and I have been held at gunpoint by Robert Mugabe's army. So which do you think of those would be untrue?
Now, I'm not going to answer this one, Helen, because I was in a live session that you did in front of about 70 or 80 people. I got it wrong, but I now know the answer. So
Okay. So, yeah, and you'd have been listening to me talking for a few minutes now. You'd have already started to draw some conclusions about me. So we've got some,
Stephen Watson thinks it's B. He's gone for B.
right.
Thank
Yeah.
you for being the first contributor, Stephen. That was brave.
Fantastic. Right. Well, the version that is slightly untrue is that I am not an Olympian gold medalist. I am a gold medalist ballroom dancer, but just not to Olympian standard. I have been up to the most northern part of Norway to see the Northern Lights, and sadly did have the experience of coming face to face with some of Mr. Mugabe's military. So, as I say, our brains are a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. They slot in the bits that are missing, which is kind of what you've had to do with this exercise. But quite often, when we're filling those gaps in, there tends to be this negative bias that kicks in. So we draw the wrong conclusions.
It's interesting. A was the most popular vote, so Colin and Mick and a number of others also voted for A. So
yeah,
it is really interesting. I came to certain conclusions when I first saw you, and as I say, I was wrong.
yeah,
I naturally assumed you were an Olympic gold medalist, but I got it wrong from there. It's really interesting to see that dichotomy.
yeah.
People have been watching the same you for the last 15 minutes or so, and are reaching conclusions and different assumptions.
Yeah. So we know our thoughts are very powerful, and nothing in this world can torment you as much as your own thoughts, or you can use your thoughts to be a very empowering and resourceful tool. And that's where we want to really try and make the shift. So if we could have the next slide, please. We're like the Downing Street briefings, aren't we, Simon?
Yeah, I've never thought of myself as Chris Whitty before, but here we go. Oh dear, that doesn't look good. Hang on a second. There you
There
go.
we are.
Is that the one you're expecting?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good, good.
So at the start of this session, I said the most complex thing in the world is in your room right now, and it's our brains. They're so incredibly clever. You can read information where the words are all jumbled up and misspelt, and sometimes we see things that aren't actually real. And even when we have the information, we decide ourselves which bits of that information are true. And even when they're not, this is still down to our thinking, our beliefs, our attitudes will all have an impact on that. So the way our brain works is a little bit like a puzzle. And if we had the odd piece missing, as I say, we make up that information dependent on how we feel about the person, how we might be feeling in that day, and just what our attitudes might be at that time.
Can I just ask you a question, Helen? Because I'm looking after it, but you say that your brain is capable of seeing things that aren't really there, and that's often how sort of those visual tricks work. Can your brain embed a thought or an action or an event that actually never took place? So I explain circumstances. When I had hair a million years ago, I spent a year of my life as a roadie. And I worked largely in the Northwest, but I also came out and did things like Reading Monsters of Rock. In those days, Status Quo were heading up, so you can see how long ago it was. But I have told people over the last 10 years that I was a roadie for Bruce Springsteen at the Manchester Apollo when I was in 1981, whenever it was, 80, 81. That is not true. But I didn't find out I was telling a lie until I was on a train journey with a client who was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan and told me that Bruce Springsteen didn't tour in the UK in that year. So I had, I had no interest in just making up stories and telling lies, but somewhere along the line, somewhere over the last 40 years, something had embedded in my brain. So I've only been telling this story well, I told it for 10 years and I then stopped telling it when I found out it wasn't true. But if you had put me on a lie detector test and asked me, were you ever a roadie for Bruce Springsteen? I absolutely would have said yes. And I have images in my brain of things that clearly just didn't happen. I mean, is that just weird for me, or is that something the brain does?
Well, it can become a belief, and our beliefs are our version of the truth, of fact. What's right, what's wrong, but you can change beliefs.
I changed my belief into being a Bruce Springsteen roadie. I guess there are worse beliefs as well, but it's interesting to know, just to know that, and it was absolutely embedded. I absolutely believe it. I think in my head, I can still see the spiral staircase at the back of the Manchester Polo. I don't know if it's got a spiral staircase, taking stuff up to the change room. Very strange. Really, really, it's a really visual thought, but apparently it never happened. Strange.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because when we visualize things, it can become very real. And if you think about athletes do a lot of mental rehearsal. And when the Japanese Olympics took place and sort of interviewers were having a conversation with somebody who'd won a race or just, achieved gold, they would sort of have a conversation with them about, how did you prepare for this? And a lot of the time you heard those athletes saying, I've been here so many times in my own mind. And it's that mental rehearsal. And that becomes our reality.
No, it certainly became mine. No, it's strange.
Okay. So if we can just go on to the next slide, please, Simon. I was just sort of talking about how influential our thinking can be. And the next question I was going to ask you is actually, you're the most incredibly influential and important person that you're ever going to speak to, and it's yourself. And a lot of us have conversations going on inside our heads. Sometimes it's like a running commentary. Some people call it self-talk or your inner dialogue. But one very simple way of describing it is your thinking. Ultimately, it's your thinking. So absolutely everything started with a thought. The chair that you're possibly sitting on, the desk that your laptop or computer's on, would have started with a thought. Somebody had an idea and then turned that into a reality. And anyone have any idea of how many thoughts we have a day? I'll just again use the chat box.
I'm going to put my number in. I type a bit heavily, so I get told off for that a lot.
Oh, Simon, you're not going to get the prize today.
I'm used to it. I'm not surprised. I obviously didn't have the thought with the right number. That was the problem.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
I'm still the only person who's actually has nailed their colours to a mast here.
All right. Well, it's somewhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And so that sort of works out to be about 2,500 thoughts every hour, which is a hell of a lot of mental traffic going on. So we definitely want to get our thinking in a way that works well for us. So, oh yes, we've got a few people coming up with some more suggestions. Brilliant. Thank you.
Mick and I are absolutely aligned. So Mick and I both went for 10,000, which is great. The other thing I have to remember, of course, there's a slight delay between the broadcast. Yeah. So when I'm looking and thinking no one's actually responded, I have to wait 15, 20 seconds for it to arrive. Colin was closer, but still no cigar, but it was a better effort. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Okay, so if we can just go on to the next slide then. Simon, thank you. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about that inner dialogue, because as I say, whether it's thoughts, whether it's self-talk, whatever you want to call it, it's in the shape or in the form of words. And our words will either hurt or heal us. And they'll be the one thing that actually drive us. So if you're applying for jobs and there's sort of quite doubtful dialogue going on, then that's not going to help in terms of confidence levels. So at this point, what I'd like to do is I'm going to do an exercise with you. And actually, Simon, we can stop sharing the screen.
Sure.
I don't think the slides are going to be that important now. Thank you.
Okay. There you go.
So
would you like the whole screen? Shall I disappear and let you do this?
no, it's fine. Oh, okay.
Well, that was my typing again. Sorry. There you go.
Okay. So what I'd like to do then is, as I say, just do a little exercise with you. And I just want you to close your eyes for a moment and just imagine that you're holding a lemon in your hand, a fresh lemon. And you can feel that waxy, smooth surface of that lemon. And just now imagine that you're going to cut that lemon in half. You're picking up a knife, cutting the lemon in half, and you can smell that lovely, fresh, zesty scent of that lemon juice. Maybe you can even feel some of the juice in the palm of your hand. And now I'd like you to pick up one half of the lemon and lick the flesh end of that lemon and taste that real sharp, bitter, sour juice of the lemon. Feel the flesh of the lemon on your tongue. And then just imagine you're putting your lemon down and just open your eyes when you feel ready. So I'm guessing, and again, feel free to use the chat box, in terms of what part of that process felt real to you. Now, funny enough, when I do this in live audiences, when I get people to imagine they're licking the flesh end of the lemon, I do see some faces sort of screwing up almost as if they can taste that bitterness. And I wonder how many people actually even might have started salivating. Could almost really sense that that taste of that lemon juice.
I'm still salivating now. I've got to say also, I was really conscious of the fact I still had my camera on. So I was trying to, so I didn't pull too many ridiculous faces that everyone had to endure. But yeah, you're right. It was that moment when you said, put the flesh of the lemon to your mouth. It became very real. And the other thing was when you described it as the waxy peel of the lemon as well. That was very real for me as well. I could feel that. Wait for the other guys to put things on chat, but the taste. I could taste it. There's no doubt about that. There was definitely a physical reaction.
Yeah, and interestingly, we don't have a lemon, so it really does go to show how the power of suggestion and just words can have such an impact. So I know people are still maybe popping things in the chat box, but what I'd like to do now is, again, just another very simple exercise of just close your eyes and think about a sunset. And as you're thinking about that sunset, do you get a picture in your mind's eye? And really focusing on that picture now, think about what sort of feelings does it start to generate? And I suspect it'll probably be feelings of calm, peace, happiness, feeling relaxed, carefree type feelings. Okay, so just open your eyes then. All right, so I just said one word. I'm guessing most people would have got a picture in their mind's eye and then got some fairly nice feelings going on. And again, that what we've done is just really demonstrated how Words create images, generate feelings, which would then generate a behavior or an action. And if I just left everybody with their eyes closed, focusing on that lovely sunset, you might have kind of gone into a bit of a daydreamy state, maybe even fallen asleep if you've had your lunch as well. So we know that those words can have impact. This time, I just want to do a different exercise, closing your eyes for the last time. So this time, don't think about a purple tree. And I'm guessing you will have to have thought about a purple tree. And the difference being is I've used the word don't. Now, the brain doesn't get images for words like don't, can't, shan't, mustn't, shouldn't, wouldn't. And yet when you think about how frequently we use those words, okay, so my instruction was don't think about a purple tree, and you probably got an image of a purple tree in your mind, and yet actually I was asking you not to. Given that the brain doesn't get images for words like don't, your brain's translated that as think about a purple tree. So imagine if you're going for an interview and you're saying to yourself, don't get nervous. Your brain is getting images of get nervous. And what's the feeling that you're going to then generate? It's going to be more of nerves. If you've got butterflies in your stomach, that's what you're going to get more of. Now, you might not want to sort of turn around and say, I'm calm, because you might have the butterflies in your stomach, which very evidently tell you you're feeling nervous. But you could actually start to say, I'm going to become calmer. I want to feel calmer. Focus on what you want rather than what you don't want. Again, going back to the word don't, have you ever said, don't forget my shopping list, or don't forget my wallet? And then you're suddenly in the car and you're off somewhere and you go, oh no. So your brain's translated that as forget wallet, or forget shopping list. So we need to think about what's the purpose of what we're saying. So don't forget. The purpose of that is to remember. So why would we just not say, remember my car keys, or remember my shopping list?
Can I just get Helen, does it have to be verbalized, or is it if you have that thought as well?
That thought as well.
I go around the house thinking I mustn't lose my phone, and I spend 80% of my time looking for my phone.
Yeah.
And I'm only saying that to myself. I'm not saying it to my son, who then blackmails me to get my phone back. But that's really interesting. So that I'm sure everyone on the chat will also will know of occasions. And there's one lady on the chat at the moment who had her first interview recently, and nerves were an issue. And I don't think I helped. Listening to you, I don't think I helped, because I think I could have visualized a calmer environment, a calmer situation for her than I did. So I think it's very useful for anyone who has responsibility for working with other people, not just working on your own emotions, but helping other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you think about the wording, don't hesitate to contact me. How often do we see that at the bottom of emails or letters? And actually, what you're doing is turning around saying to your customer, hesitate before you get in touch. So yeah, it's something worth thinking about. I did some work with an international company a while ago, and they banned the use of that statement. So again, the purpose of don't hesitate to contact me is because you want to encourage people to get in touch. So why not just say, feel free to get in touch?
That's a great question from Mike as well. Can you actually condition it out of yourself? Can you stop either using the phrase, or can you overcome it if you do?
Yeah. So I actually have a positive reframe document. And if anybody wants this, please drop me an email or drop me a message on through LinkedIn, and I can share this with you. You can certainly recondition yourself. We all have the equivalent of like little apps that are going on. All right. We'll have an app for how we manage worry. We'll have an app for everything that we do in our lives. And just in the same way, you can reprogram an app, you can reprogram how you do things. And it's just a case of retraining yourself and getting into a different habit, because that's all these little apps are, is it becomes a habit. And as I say, we naturally default into some of this negative speak, whereas it's a little bit harder work at trying to reframe. But if you just take one statement that you say quite regularly, I mean, every night when my husband comes home, I sort of say, how's your day? Or how are you? And he'll say, oh, I'm shattered. Okay, well, by 8:30, he sat in front of the telly, head down, eyes shut, gone. But if I said to him, well, how would you prefer to feel instead? And he might say, well, have a bit more energized, feel a bit more awake. Then funny enough, that's actually what his brain's listening to. And it'll be that evening that he'll stay wide awake till about 10 o'clock.
So I do a lot of my work with people going through the job hunting process or transitioning out of the armed forces. And I mean, the last 18 months have been really tough, and we're not out of the woods yet. The jobs market is unpredictable at best. It may not be as horrible as it was last year, but it's still, there are certain parts of the market that are still in great trouble. And I talk quite a lot about not being reliant on motivation, because I believe motivation only gets you so far. You can't expect to be motivated every day. So to lean into habit forming approach to job hunting, so that you work similar times of the day, doing certain things, set targets, accomplishments. We talk about making your bed first thing in the morning, that early stage accomplishment to get your day off to a good start. If you have had a particularly bad day, and and this could be at work, it could be with the kids, it could be on a job hunt, you had a particularly bad day, what are the actions you should take mentally and with yourself to try to limit the likelihood of a replication of that? Because I tend to have a bad series of days. I don't have one bad day. I have a series of bad days, but equally I have a series of good days. And they're usually kicked off by one exceptionally good thing or one exceptionally bad thing. And I carry the bad thing with me. What could we do to recondition ourselves so that on the start of day 2, we're not carrying day 1 with us if it was bad?
There's maybe a couple of questions that you could ask yourself, because again, as human beings, when we have a bad day, we might awfulize or catastrophize the situation. So sometimes just asking yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm going to be really blunt here, where 10 is death, can we put this into context? Where does that sit on that scale? And another question you might ask yourself is actually, how important will that be in another 6 days' time or 6 months' time? And it really just starts to take the heat out of the situation and put it into context. And another thing might be actually, it's forcing yourself a bit, but what can I find that's positive in the situation?
Yeah. In my world, the absence of feedback from has taken that away from people, because normally, human beings, I find generally are kind and considerate. As a generalization, I think we go off that path, but I think we're born kind. And that's certainly been my experience with children. But I think that when you get feedback in an interview, even when they're telling you haven't gone to the next stage, the natural human reflex is to give some good news. And unfortunately, that's led to a lot of lies being told in the last year or so. I've never had an interview candidate who's been told they were last in the low. They always nearly got there. Oh, you were so close. And they think they're being kind. But in fact, actually, that then has quite a negative knock-on effect. But if you are, there are situations, I think, when it is really hard to find the positives, or there's a vacuum. So there's negatives there, or there's just nothing there. You've had an interview, you just haven't heard back. You've been ghosted, which obviously is my world. But can you, if there isn't a positive, can you still train yourself to look on the new day as a new day and move forward from there?
Yeah, absolutely. A I suppose it's that scenario of putting things behind you, and sometimes that isn't always that easy. But if you have been hit with, you haven't got a job, and you've been given some pretty hard to listen to feedback, it's reframing that. Okay, there's an opportunity here for me to consider what I need to do, because then actually it's, am I applying for the right jobs? Do I need to do some retraining? Do I need to relook at my CV? Am I filling out the job application form? It's that self-responsibility that starts to, and it's about being in control. And all of those things leave you in control. And I think when we're sitting listening to what somebody's telling us, all the reasons why we haven't got a job, and sometimes that can be tough to listen to, take it as data. All right. Somebody's giving you some information. It's what you decide to do with it. That's going to be the next most important thing, because you could actually choose to go, you know what, I'm going to ignore you. I don't believe any of it, because perhaps in your heart of hearts, you feel you're damn good at what you do. Now, if the same thing kept repeating itself, then I would suggest, yeah, you maybe do need to step back and just have a reassess of things. And you could choose to take on board some of what you've been told and not all of it, because everything is subject to interpretation. Somebody giving you feedback is their interpretation of how you've performed in that interview.
Colin's point is it's the lack of feedback. Nothing's meant to happen in a vacuum. But in my head, when there's no information, I manage to find a way to see the worst. There was a situation in my life recently where someone delayed having a meeting with me for a couple of months. Within 10 minutes of getting that message, I'd got to the point where actually they were just letting me down gently. They didn't want to work with me. I'd done something terribly wrong, or they'd heard something terrible about me. And literally in 10 minutes, with nothing more than a let's chat in April instead of in January, I had gone to this place where I was in, and I think that's because that's a product of the whole day. Had my day been going better, I'd have seen it better. There's a lady on the call called Suzanne Penny. I'll start sharing the chat actually so people can see it. Just while we were sharing, now it won't show, it only brings up new comments. So can everyone just type a comment quickly and then at least we'll look popular, which would be nice. But Suzanne's come on the call, and Suzanne probably taught me more about the relevance and importance of group work. So I was a one-to-one coach. My executive coaching has been one-to-one. Suzanne talked a lot about, and I've watched her and listened to her in groups and watched the way that the positivity can feed in groups if it's led in that direction. And Suzanne is just a master at that, incredible. And I will give a quick shout out to her retreat that she's just launching, I think next month, which now it's funny, Suzanne joined late, so she's saying it's 50,000 thoughts per day. So there's, I think you guys are in the same place. I guessed 10,000, Suzanne. So I was a million miles off. We talked about it earlier. But one thing that is interesting for me is the impact of a group. And I've heard somewhere that if you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, in Suzanne's group sessions, as long as the majority of people are positive, the rest follow those. And you can see it happening over time, and they leave more positive. And that was something that I didn't do before. So to go back to Colin's piece, if you're surrounded by positive people, or you make that specific intention to be followed by positive people, I think you're more likely to get something embedded in your head that you can then feed off in a positive way.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is this personal training of your head. I think is incredible because it works. There's something that Helen can't do today because it involves everyone having a polo, and I didn't get everyone prepped for this. But I've seen Helen do some incredible stuff on a regular basis with people in the armed forces, which many of us in civil, that's a tough gang to influence about what some of us might have seen historically. I put in a post this week. Historically, this sort of stuff was airy fairy bunkum to me until I saw what you do, and it changed my thinking. Having your work, have you seen that there are very clearly more challenging groups than others, or is the human brain the same inside all our heads, and we can all take control of it?
Pretty much the same. The toughest gig I've worked with is actually teenagers. They're the most challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah. But were you going to say something about the polo mint?
I was just going to say that, I mean, if you can just, I mean, the impact of it is incredible. And the thing I remember most is watching these fairly hardened faces of individuals shocked when the polo mint starts spinning the other way. If you could just talk through what that was and what you were managing to get people to do,
Yeah.
that had immense impact on everyone in that room. Everyone I have spoken who was in the room. I think it was the first time I saw it was at Cottesmore.
Yeah.
Everyone has mentioned it to me since, and they're all still slightly befuddled by it. They don't understand, but they just trust you because of it.
Well, if anyone wants to try it, you just need one polo mint and a piece of cotton thread, probably the length from your hand down to your elbow, and pop your polo mint on your thread. And then what you can do is literally just hold your arm still and think to yourself north and south. And what you start to notice as the polos swing backwards and forwards, you can then just say east and west, and it goes side to side. And then you can ask it to go clockwise or anti-clockwise, and again, it'll do that. And what that is, it's the power of your subconscious mind guiding that, because when I've done this in a room full of nearly 100 people, the one thing I sort of say is, are you absolutely certain you weren't swinging your arm? And I can tell from the audience they're not. They're absolutely gobsmacked that this has actually happened. So if that's something that you want to try, as Simon said, I did this at Cottesmore where Simon and I first met, and the regimental sergeant major has come back to me since and sort of said he tried it with his daughters and they thought he was Darren Brown after doing that exercise. So it's quite mind-blowing, and it's a lovely trick to be able to do with people.
I tried to impress my 6-year-old son with it, and he just ate the polo. After about 15 seconds, he just took the polo and ate it. I think that's the difference between maybe the age of Stephen's children and mine, I suspect. But yes, Freddie just saw it as a bonus and ate it. I interrupted. Sorry, went off on a slightly. I'll shut up now and let you do what you're doing.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Just one other. Well, there's two things I'd like to finish off with. One is just a little tip on managing worry, because when you are going through that stage of trying to get a job and make massive changes in your life, there are going to be some niggles that are going on up here. And one of the things that you can do is actually develop a worry book. Now, if you don't want to go down the route of having a book, that's fine. You can do this on your mobile phone. But what I'd say to you is perhaps just jot down as things come into your mind, because if you are a worrier, what you find is it takes up that space in our heads. It can prevent us from thinking clearly, being focused, making sound decisions. So actually being able to download some of those worries makes a massive difference. So if you can write them down as they pop into your mind, but actually not deal with anything, then what you're going to do is literally at a certain point in the day that suits you, you're going to sit down with your list of worries and very, very simply ask yourself a couple of questions. So the first worry might be, oh, my car's due for an MOT. So, and your other worry might be, will my luggage arrive at my holiday destination? So let's just take the first worry, okay? Car's due for an MOT. That's been swimming around in your head for a few days now. And the first question you're going to ask yourself is it true or is it untrue? Because actually, if it's not true, cross it off. Now, because there are legalities linked to having an MOT certificate, regard it as true. So the next question is it solvable or unsolvable by me? Well, it's solvable by me. No one else is going to sort out the MOT on my car. And then the next point is, what am I going to do about it? So I can either go looking through my very ineffective, inefficient domestic filing system, or I can just ring the garage, give them my registration number, and they'll tell me. And the chances are they might sort of say, oh, yes, Helen, it's due in the next few weeks. So while I'm on the phone, I can get it booked in. The minute we take action, we take control, then that worry level comes down quite significantly. Now let's take the next worry. Well, what if my luggage gets lost when I fly on holiday? Well, today, is that true or is it untrue? It's absolutely untrue. You haven't gone yet. Cross it off. If it's untrue and it's unsolvable, you cross it off your list. And what you're doing is saying to the subconscious mind, we are not doing that one again. Now, that might not come into play immediately, okay? This is like developing a new app now for managing worry. So it might be that the next day, the same thought pops into your mind. Just go through the same process. When we're writing it down, we're downloading it. We're clearing the mental clutter. Sitting down, going through the list. Is it true? Is it untrue? Solvable, unsolvable by me? And what do I need to do? I worked with somebody who put this into practice, and to begin with, he found 80% of what he was crossing off was untrue and unsolvable. And all too often, we create a thought in order to have something to worry about. We are brilliant movie directors. We just create all this stuff, and it's not right here and now. What if I don't get the job? What if this happens? What if I'm nervous? What if I say the wrong thing? You haven't gone there yet. So think about, is it true? Is it untrue? Solvable, unsolvable by you? And what can you do about it? It's that bit about being in control that makes a massive, massive difference. So again, if there's anything that you want, any more details on managing that worry, I have got some information which I'm more than happy to share with you. Again, if you want to drop me a message through LinkedIn, more than happy to do that. So I just want any questions on the worrying at all.
Well, this is an interesting point from Colin. So Colin does his homework, and one of the reasons Colin and I are such good friends. He fills in all those failures of mine. But this is really interesting. They're saying that 80% of the thoughts that sit somewhere between 12 and 60,000 in Colin's research, 80% were negative, and 95 are exactly the same repetitive as the thoughts from the day before.
Mm.
Has that been your experience?
They can be repetitive because if we're not addressing them, then they're just going to come back. Whereas if you go through that process of virtually saying to yourself, is it true or untrue? And we start kind of dealing with things in a more helpful way rather than just letting them whir around and purgatrate, then they are going to just keep popping up.
We're moving now into the last 5-10 minutes of our time together. I'll look for... Colin's just put up the TLE Institute. I'm not sure what that'll be, but it'll be something that I now go and look up. And I'll be very knowledgeable by this time tomorrow. Recruiters, if nothing else, we can take that much information, drag it out to me that much. Last 5-10 minutes. So if you have any more questions for Helen, please pop them up into the chat. Is there anything else you want to cover in this last few minutes?
Well, I'll just finish off with just hopefully giving people a little bit of motivation and share the Sun Lounger principle with you.
Like that.
And I mean, this is a bit like, so it's the SLP as opposed to NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, only this is a lot simpler. And And it's an easy technique that anyone can apply. It's most commonly used by very annoying people on holiday, but it can be used for a force for our own good. And it's a technique that helps us very quickly get to grips with a task that perhaps we wouldn't ordinarily be bothered about doing, but we can apply it to our life. But this time you would now be doing it with vigor, energy, enthusiasm, and really going at whatever you're doing with a bit of a ninja attitude. So it could be just getting out of bed on a Monday morning, tidying up the house, filling out that job application that you need to get filled out, exercising, studying, going to work, just the ordinary things. But you might kind of wonder, well, how the hell does this work? So just picture the scenario with me for a moment, okay? You've set your alarm for 6 a.m., earlier than normal, earlier than anyone else gets up in the household. Why? Because you've decided you're going to go for a run. You're embarking on a new exercise regime. And you're quite excited and motivated, and you've put out your running gear the night before, you've got your trainers ready, your water bottles filled, you're ready to go. The next morning, the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. Oh no, you realize just how early it is. So you snooze the button about 4 times. And by 6:30, you realize you are late. Your self-belief is almost non-existent. And just for a moment, you think, maybe I'll just start this tomorrow. And just as you consider going back to sleep, you decide, no, I'm going to get up. And you're a bit disappointed in yourself, but you get going, you get started off on your run, but it's not quite as you intended. You didn't quite give it your all. Your commitment was a bit questionable. And you kind of made it happen and you feel a bit guilty. You could have done so much better. And there's maybe no sense of real pride in having gone for that run. And the worst of it is there's a risk of the same thing happening tomorrow. And these moments really inspire us. So just for a moment now, let's just go back to those dreaming sunny days when we're on holiday. Think about a time when you were fortunate enough to get away for 2 weeks of glorious sunshine, and you've spent 12 months saving up for that holiday, looking forward to those chill out days, sunshine, me time, pure magical bliss. You arrive at your destination, you check in, you put your bags in your room, and you decide to have a nosy round the complex. You are scoping the joint. But for what? Prime Sun Lounger's spot. That's what. Some people do this. It comes quite naturally to them. It's practically subconscious. It's stealth-like. But these are the sorts of things that we start to consider. We start looking at space. Where's the shade? How close is the pool to the bar? What's the noise levels? I don't want to be near the kids' pool. And how far are you away from your room? Where's it quietest? Where's it's most busy? And you go to bed that night and you set your alarm for 6 a.m. Why? You're on holiday. This is your chill out time. There's no need to rush anywhere. But oh no, you are on a mission. At 6 a.m., that alarm goes off. You are up, you grab your shorts on. Next thing, you're picking up the towels and you're out that door, heading down the passageway towards the lift. And in that moment, you feel like you own the hotel. Until another guest comes out their room doing exactly the same thing. And now it feels like the race is on. There's a sense of urgency, thinking he'd better not have his eyes on my sun lounger. And you're walking in your flip-flops and you can hear them clicking. You're almost in a little jog, keen to be the first at that pool. right now, in this very moment, your commitment is absolutely unquestionable. It's off the scale. And as you get closer to the pool, you see your sun loungers and you're almost going, yes, because the ones you want are free. No one else has claimed them. This matters. And it's this feeling that I'm talking about right here, this level of passion, that level of hunger, that level of energy. That's the Sun Lounger principle. Take that feeling and apply it in your life, apply it to what matters, apply it to filling out that application form, apply it when you're going for the interview, apply it to your health, your family, your career. And guess where it all begins? Right here in our heads. That Sun Lounger principle. Let's apply it to our thinking to achieve what we want in our lives. Whatever you do in your life, do it on purpose, do it with purpose. And in other words, just do it deliberately. So attack your life with SLP.
So that's a fantastic. And we talk about the intentional job hunt because people can get into sort of fairly relaxed and sometimes damaging processes, and it stops being with purpose and it stops being intentional. And it just happens. So that's very true. As we come to the end of our time, I'd just like to go to Charanjit's question. What's the one thing? So if you know this is your elevator pitch towards positive thinking. What is the one thing you would advise someone to do to help them overcome any negative thoughts and the worries of everyday life, or a challenging job hunt, or a challenging transition, or whatever it is?
I think that reframing makes a lot of difference. If we start to notice what we're saying to ourselves, and if it's negative, it's reframe it. What's the purpose of saying it negatively? And again, as I say, I'm more than happy if anyone wants to message me. I'll send you an attachment to have a look at with the reframing. There's a reframing workbook, and I've got a reframing document of examples of the sorts of words we say and the ones that you can replace them with as a suggestion. But as I say, if our default is to think negatively, it's spinning that round to start to think differently. I'm going to quote something from Amy Cuddy, who's a Harvard University professor and researcher. And she talks about fake it till you make it. And she's got a clip on YouTube, which is well worth watching. And again, she talks about power poses and how even in a moment where we're feeling really nervous, striking a power pose can actually make us, I think it takes about 2 minutes. She talks about it taking about 2 minutes to change the way we feel. So those sorts of things can have a massive effect as well.
Brilliant. I suspect in many ways you and Suzanne are saying similar things. Suzanne's talking about positive daily mantras, so you have a repetitive process. And from a point of ignorance, I see a mantra as something that is a relatively short, repeated phrase. Is that a definition of a mantra? And then the other thing that I think is so important is that just know that you are totally enough, and remember that every step of the journey is part of the journey. And we work with job hunters to stop them having their only target being a great new job. It's a really important target and it's the end game, absolutely. But if that's the only target of your job hunt, then by definition, you are going to fail every day that you don't land that job, and it gets harder and harder and harder. And I think that's the same with many things in life. Have that big goal, but recognize the process points that are going to get you there. So maybe it's a daily mantra, but in my world, that mantra might change because you move further through the job hunt. So you're at a different stage and you're facing different challenges. But for me, the one thing that has come across everything that you've said today, Helen, and stuff that Laura said in a previous session and Suzanne is saying today, it's about engaging with your mental capability, your mental strength, and understanding that you can influence it. Yeah. And I think that was the enlightening moment for me back at Cotswold, that you taught me, along with 70 other guys in that room, you taught me that I can actually take control of that. I'm
Yeah.
not managed by my subconscious. I can manage my subconscious. And that made a massive difference to my life.
One of the things I say to people is, our thoughts are a bit like running a movie, and we are our own movie directors. And if you think about the way movies are made, if a movie director doesn't like the way the performance is going, the actors are going a bit off script, they only shout one word, and that's cut, and everything comes to a grinding halt, and they stop and they reassess. And if you don't like the way your movie is running, could you deliberately shout cut and think, what is it you would prefer instead? And a real great example of this is, I worked with a lady a while ago, and she sort of said to me, her husband was being made redundant in 2 months' time. She was in a precarious position within her own role. Their daughter was going off to university in the summer. They wanted to finance their daughter through uni as much as possible, so she didn't end up with a big sort of student debt before she started her career. And they still had a mortgage to pay. And then the story so those were the facts. And then the story unwound, which was the movie, where she was sort of saying, well, we're of an age now where we might not be easy to get jobs. We're getting close to our retirement. And then my husband's redundancy package will only sort of last so long. We've still got this mortgage to pay. And what if our house gets repossessed? And before you knew it, she had made them homeless. So I had to sort of say, right, whoa, just stop there then. Let's bring that back to the facts. Picking up the facts again, I sort of said to her, right, your husband's got 2 months' notice. Could he, in that 2 months' time, be updating his CV, all the stuff that, you would do, Simon, update his CV, upload it onto recruitment websites, look at the local jobs pages, all that sort of practical stuff. She could perhaps do the same as well. I said, and who's to say that in 2 months' time, your husband isn't walking out of one job straight into another with his redundancy package? And who's to say that with that redundancy package, you might put some aside to assist with your daughter. You might put the other bit aside to pay off some of your mortgage. And that would then give you financial security. And just one small point with regards to your ages, actually, with age comes an incredible amount of experience. I would really play on that because, that would be in your favor. Which of those two movies leaves you more in control? And she sort of said, well, your version.
Yeah. I think that's right. And you used the movie analogy before. And it's funny. I called cut on something 10 days, 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to bore everyone with it now, but next Tuesday I start a new movie, and that's really exciting for me because I just wasn't happy with the movie I found myself in, and I knew that I had that control. I could say cut, and we could change the last scene, as it were. So I'm in the same movie. My life is a movie, but I'm in the process of hopefully changing that last scene, or maybe if I hang around long enough, the last few scenes. But that and again, that came from you. It was that concept where you can just say cut,
Yeah.
and you can take control. And it's fascinating. I'm an old bloke to have a 6-year-old, but Freddie teaches me more. Watching the simplicity of a 6-year-old's brain work and the way they address problems. There's the ones that are insurmountable because he can't see the journey, and then he'll get his Lego out, and every brick is a part of that journey, and he'll create this huge. Or I don't always know what it is, but he creates this huge thing that's taken him a long time. But it's been a long journey to get there. I think we're coming up to our time. It's been fantastic having you, Helen. I'm so grateful for the time that you've given us, and I'm so grateful for everything that you're doing, particularly with the armed forces. And I know that you'll be back on barracks soon, doing some incredible stuff with those guys. I'd like to thank everyone who has also come along, and I hope you've had value from it. And I really am not on commission, but I would seriously recommend you go and have a look at Suzanne's retreats. I think it's something original, very different in the job search world. And it's breaking some of the molds that we can all fall ourselves into. So that's just another plug there. You owe me a beer or a coffee, Suzanne. But everyone who's been on, I'm really grateful. Thank you very much. Please remember that these events We will continue to do them. We're doing them for the next 2 or 3 months, 1 or 2 a week. The selfish bit is that we want to get the Next Steps brand out and people understand that this thing called Next Steps is coming, and it's going to hopefully give a really big option for transitioning armed forces people and veterans to how they are supported through that transition or through their career development. It will be live, depending on the Charities Commission, some point in Q2 this year, I suspect. So try to remember that. If you want to get involved, if there's something you would like to contribute to a charity in this space, just drop myself a line. We're looking for mentors. We're always looking for money as well, but that will come at a later date. But yeah, mentors at this point in time, and we'd like to go and talk to anyone that we can about that charity. So bear that in mind. Final thank you to Helen, and a little plug for our next session, which is a week today with James Kennedy. James is the ultimate pivot. I think he's significant, I suppose we are, significantly younger than me. And I think he's in his 9th career, might be his 8th. But he'll talk about how we can manage that process of change as we develop and evolve our careers, and that you don't just have to get stuck into one lane because that's where you started. So that is at 1:00 here. I was trying to remember what they say at the end of Batman, but I can't. But it's on this channel at 1:00 next Friday. A final thank you to Helen. Please go and have a look at Helen's website. I'll be putting up connections and links to Helen's stuff on both the event page in LinkedIn, but also the LinkedIn group for the Best on the Web Masterclass series. Well worth joining that group because you'll be updated on everything that we're going in. And I keep promising to put resources in there. I haven't yet, but I will. So it might be worth jumping on that as well. But thanks again, Helen, and thanks everyone for being involved. And there'll be a recording of this that will turn up on my LinkedIn profile and on the other channels we've been broadcasting to, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, I think. And also I'll be making sure that Helen has a copy, so it'll be turning up on Helen's stuff as well. Thanks very much for coming along, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you all next Friday for the next one with James Kennedy. Cheers. Thank you.